Lily was a whisper in a world of shouts. Just 7 years old, her eyes, the color of faded denim, held a constant, gentle fear. Her mother, Sarah, was her shield, a warm hand always ready to squeeze reassurance into Lily's small palm. They walked westward, their covered wagon sold long ago for meager supplies. Sarah pulled their few belongings in a small cart, humming soft tunes to keep Lily's spirits up. "Almost there, little bird," Sarah would say, her voice raspy but full of love. "Just a little further to grandfather's farm." Lily clutched her worn doll, a silent confidant named Daisy. Daisy had a button-eye missing and a faded dress, but to Lily, she was perfect. Sarah often stopped to point out wildflowers, teaching Lily their names, trying to nurture a spark of joy in her daughter's quiet soul. She knew Lily was different, more sensitive than other children, and Sarah fiercely protected her from the harsh realities of their journey. Sarah's main goal was keeping Lily safe no matter the cost. The sky turned an angry purple, mirroring the fear in Lily's eyes. One moment, the sun was a gentle hand on their backs. The next, the wind howled like a hungry wolf. Rain lashed down, turning the dusty trail into a muddy river. Sarah pulled Lily close, wrapping her in a thin, threadbare blanket. "It'll pass, little bird," Sarah said, her voice strained against the wind. But the storm didn't pass. It raged for days. They huddled beneath a rocky overhang, shivering and soaked. Sarah shared their meager rations, giving Lily the larger portion. Sarah's cough grew worse, a deep, rattling sound that frightened Lily. Sarah's face was flushed, then pale, then flushed again. Despite her own discomfort, Sarah continued to sing to Lily, her voice weakening with each passing hour. The storm finally broke, leaving behind a chilling dampness and a silence that felt heavier than the rain. Sarah, however, remained still. Lily blinked, her eyelids heavy. The sun was a blinding white, so different from the storm's angry darkness. She reached out, her small hand landing on Sarah's arm. It was cold, too cold. "Manga," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. She shook Sarah gently. "Mama, wake up. I'm hungry." Sarah didn't stir. Lily pushed harder, a knot of fear tightening in her stomach. Daisy, her doll, lay beside her, its button-eye staring blankly at the sky. Lily picked up Daisy and held her close, seeking comfort. "Mama's just sleeping," she told Daisy, but her voice wavered. She tugged at Sarah's blanket, trying to pull it higher. The blanket wouldn't move. Sarah was too still, too quiet. Lily didn't understand what was happening, but a deep, primal fear gripped her heart. She was alone, utterly and completely alone, with a cold, silent mother and a sky that seemed too vast and empty. The sun beat down, turning the rocky overhang into an oven. Lily stayed close to Sarah, whispering stories to Daisy, pretending everything was normal. Hours crawled by. Lily's stomach rumbled, but she didn't dare leave Sarah's side. She found a small, wilted flower and placed it in Sarah's hand, hoping it would make her happy. Then, a shadow fell across them. Lily flinched, burying her face in Daisy's faded dress. A man stood there, tall and lean, silhouetted against the bright sky. He wore a worn leather hat, pulled low over his eyes, and a dust-covered duster. He was a cowboy, weathered and silent, his face etched with lines that spoke of hardship and solitude. He didn't say a word, but his eyes, a deep, knowing brown, scanned the scene before him, taking in every detail. The still figure of Sarah, the frightened child clutching a doll, the desolate landscape. He dismounted his horse slowly, his movements deliberate and quiet, as if not to disturb the heavy silence. Caleb knelt beside Sarah, his touch gentle as he checked for a pulse he already knew wouldn't be there. He saw the telltale signs of pneumonia, the lingering dampness in her clothes. He understood, without needing words, the story the landscape told. Hardship, struggle, and ultimately, loss. He glanced at Lily, huddled against the rock, her eyes wide and unblinking. He saw the fear, the confusion, and the deep well of sadness that threatened to consume her. He knew he couldn't leave her there. The desert was unforgiving, and Lily wouldn't survive alone. He wasn't a charitable man, or so he thought, but something in Lily's silent vulnerability stirred a long dormant ember within him. He straightened, his gaze sweeping the horizon, assessing the situation. He needed to find a suitable place to bury Sarah, a place where she could rest in peace. His jaw tightened with resolve. He knew what he had to do. Caleb worked with a quiet efficiency, his movements precise and respectful. He chose a spot beneath a lone juniper tree, its branches offering a small patch of shade. He dug the grave deep and wide, his muscles straining with the effort. He wrapped Sarah in her own blanket, tucking Daisy beside her. Lily watched, her eyes fixed on Caleb, her small hand never leaving Daisy's side. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just watched, her face an unreadable mask. When the grave was filled, Caleb gathered some fallen branches and fashioned a simple cross, securing it with strips of leather. He placed it at the head of the grave, a silent marker of a life lived and lost. He stood for a moment, his head bowed in a gesture of respect. Then he turned to Lily, his gaze soft but firm. He extended his hand, offering her a silent invitation. It was time to leave. The desert held no comfort for them here. Lily hesitated, her gaze flickering between Caleb's outstretched hand and her mother's fresh grave. He didn't push, didn't speak. He simply waited, his patience as boundless as the desert sky. Finally, slowly, she placed her small hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle, reassuring. He lifted her onto his horse, settling her in front of him. She was light as a feather, her body tense and fragile. He adjusted his hat, shielding her face from the harsh sun. He had no idea what he was doing. He was a loner, a man of few words and even fewer attachments. Children were a mystery to him, but he couldn't deny the pull he felt, the need to protect this small, wounded creature. He nudged his horse forward, turning away from the grave and towards the vast, unknown horizon. He didn't know where he was going or what the future held. He only knew that he and Lily were in this together, for now. The journey to Caleb's ranch was a silent testament to their shared grief and unspoken connection. Days bled into nights as they traversed the rugged landscape. Lily remained a small, silent shadow, clinging to Daisy and rarely speaking. Caleb, a man of few words to begin with, found himself even more tongue-tied in her presence. He offered her water, pointing to his canteen. He shared his jerky, holding it out to her with a nod. He wrapped her in his coat when the desert nights grew cold. These simple gestures were his way of communicating, of offering comfort without the need for words. He watched her constantly, noting her every move, every flicker of emotion in her eyes. He knew she was grieving, processing the trauma of losing her mother. He just didn't know how to help her heal. The silence between them was heavy, a constant reminder of the loss they both carried. But within that silence, a fragile bond began to form, a connection built on shared hardship and unspoken understanding. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they arrived. The ranch was a small haven carved out of the harsh landscape. A single, weathered cabin stood nestled against a backdrop of towering red rocks. A rickety wooden fence surrounded a small patch of dry, dusty land. It wasn't much, but it was home. As they approached, a large, scruffy dog bounded out, barking a warning. This was Buster, Caleb's loyal companion. He was a mix of breeds, with a thick coat of fur and intelligent, watchful eyes. Buster stopped short when he saw Lily, sniffing the air cautiously. He circled them, his tail wagging hesitantly, unsure of this new presence in his territory. He growled softly, a low rumble in his chest, clearly wary of the small, silent girl clinging to Caleb. The ranch was about to change, whether Buster liked it or not. Inside the cabin, Caleb was even more out of his element. He offered Lily a bowl of stew, a simple concoction of beans and whatever vegetables he had on hand. He watched her eat, her movements small and hesitant. He rummaged through his meager belongings, finding a clean shirt that was far too big for her. "Sleep in this?" he mumbled, handing it to her. The next morning, he attempted to brush her hair. It was a tangled mess, and he tugged and pulled, causing Lily to wince. He quickly abandoned the brush, opting instead to braid her hair loosely, his large hands clumsy but gentle. The result was lopsided and uneven, but Lily didn't complain. She simply sat still, her eyes downcast. Despite his awkwardness, Caleb was trying, and Lily sensed that. These small, imperfect acts of care were his way of showing he cared, even if he didn't know how to say it. Buster, initially hesitant, began to sense Lily's sadness. He noticed her quiet sobs at night, her vacant stare during the day. He started leaving his favorite bone near her feet, a silent offering of comfort. One afternoon, Lily sat outside, clutching Daisy, her shoulders shaking. Buster nudged her hand with his wet nose. Lily flinched at first, then slowly reached out and stroked his fur. Buster leaned into her touch, his tail wagging tentatively. He whined softly, as if understanding her pain. From that moment on, Buster became Lily's constant companion. He followed her everywhere, offering her silent support and unwavering loyalty. He was a warm, furry presence in a world that had suddenly turned cold. He was her first real friend at the ranch, a furry bridge to healing and connection. He was a dog, but to Lily he was so much more. Years ago, Caleb had a wife, a vibrant woman named Eliza, and a young son, Thomas. A fever swept through their small town, taking Eliza and Thomas within days of each other. The grief was a crushing weight, a darkness that threatened to consume him. He sold everything, leaving the town and everything that reminded him of his loss. He built the ranch as a sanctuary, a place to escape the pain. He learned to live in silence, to avoid attachments, to protect himself from further heartbreak. The memory of Eliza's laughter and Thomas's small hand in his was a bittersweet ache that never truly faded. It was this memory, buried deep within him, that recognized the same raw grief in Lily's eyes. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to be left alone in a world that suddenly felt empty. That's why he couldn't leave her. He saw a reflection of his own past pain, and he knew he had to help her find a way to heal, even if he didn't know how. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lily began to emerge from her shell. Buster's constant presence was a balm to her wounded spirit. She would whisper secrets to him, her voice barely audible, and he would listen patiently, his tail thumping softly against the ground. Caleb's quiet patience also played a part. He never pushed her to talk, never demanded anything of her. He simply provided a safe and stable environment, allowing her to heal at her own pace. One morning, she followed Caleb to the chicken coop. He showed her how to scatter the feed, and she tentatively reached out, her fingers brushing against the grain. The chickens clucked and pecked around her feet, and a small smile flickered across her face. It was the first genuine smile Caleb had seen since he found her. From then on, feeding the chickens became her chore, a small act of responsibility that gave her a sense of purpose and connection to the ranch. The ranch was slowly becoming a home. The arrival of Jebediah, a traveling salesman with a wagon full of wares and a mouth full of stories, disrupted the quiet rhythm of the ranch. He was a jovial man, quick to smile and eager to make a sale. He noticed Lily immediately, her presence an unexpected anomaly in Caleb's solitary life. "A little helper, eh?" Jebediah boomed, his voice echoing across the yard. Later, while Caleb was inspecting some tools, Jebediah lowered his voice. "You know, there's a decent orphanage in Willow Creek. They take good care of youngsters. Proper schooling, 3 meals a day." Caleb stiffened, his hand tightening around the wrench. He knew Jebediah was right. He was a simple rancher, ill-equipped to raise a child. Lily deserved more than he could offer. But the thought of parting with her, of sending her away to strangers, filled him with an unexpected dread. The seed of doubt, however, had been planted. Sleepless nights followed. Caleb tossed and turned, the image of Lily's small, trusting face haunting him. He knew Jebediah was right. Lily needed proper schooling, friends her own age, opportunities he couldn't provide on his remote ranch. He thought of Eliza and Thomas, of the future they were denied. Shouldn't Lily have a chance at a full and happy life? But the thought of abandoning her, of leaving her in the care of strangers, twisted his gut. He had grown attached to her quiet presence, to the small moments of connection they shared. He saw a flicker of his lost Eliza in her smile, a hint of Thomas's innocence in her eyes. He wrestled with the decision, torn between what he thought was best for Lily and what his heart desperately wanted. He felt trapped by his own inadequacies. Was he being selfish by keeping her? Or would he be betraying her by letting her go? Lily had been playing outside with Buster, scattering feed for the chickens. Drawn by the murmur of voices, she crept closer to the cabin window. She couldn't hear everything, but she caught snippets of the conversation. Orphanage? Best for her, better life. The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Orphanage. The word conjured images of cold, sterile rooms and stern faces. Was Caleb sending her away? Was she not wanted? The fear she had felt beside her mother's body returned, even stronger now. She ran back to Buster, burying her face in his fur, tears streaming down her cheeks. From that moment on, she retreated back into her shell. She stopped smiling, stopped helping with the chores. She avoided Caleb's gaze, her eyes filled with a silent accusation. The fragile trust they had built was shattered, replaced by a deep-seated fear of abandonment. She felt alone again, more alone than ever before. Seeing Lily withdraw again was a wake-up call for Caleb. He realized that his own fears and insecurities were hurting her. He spent the next few days watching her, observing her interactions with Buster, the way she tentatively touched the wildflowers, the flicker of sadness that still lingered in her eyes. He understood then that Lily wasn't just a responsibility. She was a part of his life, a light that had chased away the darkness that had consumed him for so long. She had brought a sense of purpose back into his existence, a reason to get up each morning, a reason to care. He couldn't imagine his life without her. That evening, he sat beside her, his voice rough but sincere. "Lily," he said, "I'm not sending you away. This is your home now. You belong here with me." He saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, a tentative glimmer of trust. He knew it would take time to rebuild what had been broken, but he was determined to earn her trust back. He was keeping her. Caleb, determined to be a better guardian, swallowed his pride and sought help. He knew Mrs. Henderson, the rancher's wife from the neighboring spread, was known for her kind heart and motherly wisdom. He started writing letters, his handwriting clumsy and his words carefully chosen, asking for advice on raising a young girl. Mrs. Henderson, touched by his sincerity, responded with detailed letters filled with practical tips and gentle encouragement. She suggested simple remedies for childhood ailments, shared recipes for kid-friendly meals, and advised him on how to encourage Lily's creativity and self-expression. She even visited a few times, bringing Lily small gifts and offering Caleb hands-on guidance. He learned about Lily's love for berries, her fear of spiders, and her fascination with the stars. He started paying attention to the small details, the things that made Lily who she was. He was finally learning to be a father. Following Mrs. Henderson's advice, Caleb enrolled Lily in the small, one-room schoolhouse a few miles from the ranch. Each morning, they would ride together, the silence between them no longer heavy with grief, but filled with a comfortable understanding. Lily was initially terrified, clinging to Caleb's leg and refusing to speak to the other children. But the teacher, a kind woman named Miss Abigail, was patient and encouraging. She created a welcoming environment, and slowly, Lily began to participate in the lessons. She started making friends, shyly at first, then with increasing confidence. She bonded with a girl named Sarah, who loved to draw as much as Lily did. She learned to read and write, her eyes shining with excitement as she discovered the magic of words. The schoolhouse was a safe space, a place where she could learn and grow, a place where she could finally be a child again. Caleb would wait for her outside each day, watching her play with the other children, his heart filled with a quiet pride. One afternoon, as Caleb waited outside the schoolhouse, a larger boy named Billy started taunting him. "Look at the old man, just sitting there like a bump on a log. Can't even talk. Can you, old-timer?" Billy sneered, shoving Caleb's shoulder. Caleb, as always, remained silent, his expression unreadable. But Lily, who had been watching from the doorway, couldn't stand it any longer. She stepped forward, her small frame trembling with anger. "Leave him alone, Billy," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "He's a good man. He's kinder and braver than you'll ever be." Billy scoffed, but he backed down, surprised by Lily's unexpected outburst. He mumbled something under his breath and walked away. Lily ran to Caleb, her eyes shining with defiance. He looked at her, his gaze filled with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. In that moment, the unspoken bond between them solidified. Lily's act of bravery was a turning point, a clear demonstration of her growing love and loyalty. He was no longer just the silent cowboy who had taken her in. He was her family. Years passed, marked by the changing seasons and the quiet rhythms of ranch life. Lily was no longer the frail, frightened child Caleb had found beside her mother's grave. She had blossomed into a strong, independent young woman, her denim eyes now filled with confidence and a quiet determination. She was still shy, a trace of her early trauma lingering in her gentle demeanor, but she possessed an inner strength that radiated outwards. Caleb had aged, his face etched with deeper lines, his hair streaked with silver. But his eyes still held that knowing glint, and his heart was filled with a contentment he never thought possible. He watched Lily with pride, marveling at the woman she had become. He had given her a home, but she had given him so much more in return. The ranch, once a sanctuary from grief, was now a haven of love and laughter, a testament to the enduring power of family. Buster, now an old and grizzled companion, still followed Lily everywhere, his tail wagging with unwavering affection. One crisp autumn day, the mail carrier delivered a letter addressed to Lily. It was postmarked from a city she had only ever dreamed of. The letter was from a distant aunt, a relative of her mother's, who had recently learned of Lily's existence. The aunt wrote of a comfortable home, access to excellent schools, and opportunities that were simply unavailable in their remote corner of the world. "I know this may come as a surprise," the aunt wrote, "but I would be delighted if you would consider coming to live with me. I believe I can offer you a chance at a brighter future, a chance to fulfill your potential." Lily read the letter several times, her heart pounding in her chest. A brighter future, a chance to fulfill her potential. These were things she had longed for, things she had only dared to dream of. But the thought of leaving Caleb, of leaving the ranch that had become her home, filled her with a deep sense of unease. The decision weighed heavily on Lily's heart. She paced the small cabin, her mind racing. She loved Caleb fiercely. He had saved her, given her a home, and taught her the meaning of family. He was getting older, his movements slower, his hearing fading. She knew he needed her, especially now. Could she abandon him in his old age, leaving him alone in the remote ranch? But the city offered so much more than she could ever have on the ranch. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, of sharing her love of learning with others. She longed to see the world, to experience new things, to fulfill her potential. Staying meant security and love, but it also meant sacrificing her dreams. Leaving meant opportunity and growth, but it also meant leaving behind the only family she had ever known. She felt torn between her loyalty to Caleb and her desire for a future of her own. It was the most difficult decision she had ever faced. Finally, Lily approached Caleb, her heart pounding. She showed him the letter, her voice trembling as she explained her dilemma. Caleb listened patiently, his gaze unwavering. When she finished, he reached out and took her hand, his touch surprisingly strong. "Lily," he said, his voice raspy but filled with love, "I want you to go. You deserve to follow your dreams, to see the world, to become the person you were meant to be." He saw the tears welling up in her eyes and squeezed her hand tighter. "Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. I've lived a long life and I'm content here on the ranch. You've given me more happiness than I ever thought possible. Now it's time for you to find your own happiness." He smiled, a rare and precious sight. "Go, little bird. Fly." He was encouraging her to leave. The day Lily left, the sky was a brilliant blue, mirroring the hope that bloomed in her heart. She packed a small suitcase, filled with the few belongings she cherished: Daisy, a worn photo of her mother, and a collection of Mrs. Henderson's letters. She promised Caleb she would visit often, her voice choked with emotion. As the stagecoach pulled away, Lily looked back at Caleb, standing beside Buster, his figure silhouetted against the ranch. He didn't wave, didn't call out. He simply stood there, his presence a silent reassurance. Lily saw a mix of emotions in his eyes: sadness at her departure, but also a profound sense of pride in the woman she had become. He had given her the wings to fly, and now it was time for her to soar. She smiled through her tears, knowing that a part of her would always remain at the ranch, with the silent cowboy who had saved her life. She knew that their story wasn't ending, just changing. Years later, Lily returned to the ranch. She had become a successful teacher, fulfilling her dream of sharing her love of learning with others. She had traveled the world, seen incredible things, and experienced a life she never thought possible. But despite all her accomplishments, her heart always yearned for the quiet peace of the ranch and the comforting presence of Caleb. She found him frail but content, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. Buster was long gone, but a new dog, a scruffy pup named Lucky, lay at his feet. Lily moved into the cabin and cared for Caleb in his final days, sharing stories of her adventures and listening to his quiet wisdom. When he passed away, she buried him beside Sarah, under the shade of the old juniper tree. Lily stayed on at the ranch, cherishing the memories and honoring the legacy of the silent cowboy who had saved her life. She knew that love and family could be found in the most unexpected places, and that the bonds forged in hardship could endure forever. The shy little girl, left beside her dead mother on the trail, had found a home, a family, and a love that transcended words. The ranch was and will always be her home,